second new one.
Florida loses to South Florida. Arguably the most pathetic loss in school history. It's unarguably one of them. We're going to talk about that today on the In All Kinds of Weather forecast, picking up the pieces today. I'm your host, Neil Schulman. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at All Kinds Weather. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to drop a comment as well. Leave your thoughts about if this is the most pathetic loss in Florida Gators football history. Before we talk about that more, got to shout out our sponsor. The All Kinds of Weather forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. And they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. You know, Adrian, I just shouted out our sponsor, 401k Generation, helping you invest for your future tomorrow. I don't know that Billy Napier has a future at the University of Florida. And that's about as blunt and as just quick and to the point of a segue into our show as we can probably surmise. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Vegas had this as an 18.5-point spread for Florida. I had Florida winning 31-14. You had a very similar score, 31-17. Dustin's model, which, by the way, if you follow that to make your college football picks against the spread, that wins you some money. So be sure to check that out. Dustin's model had 40-17. It didn't have this one right. None of us had this one right. We all looked half intelligent because we all were kind of right there on USF's point total. It was the Florida point total that was responsible for the loss. The Florida offense responsible for what could be one of the worst losses in school history, is one of the worst losses in school history, could be the worst in school history. So that's why we're about to begin the show with the ugly conversation topic of, was this the worst loss in Florida Gators history? Adrian, you will get first crack at answering this. What do you think?
First crack, man. Okay, well, Billy does have a future. Could be a small one remaining as a Florida coach, but he does have a future for now. Worst loss in school history, right? Well, modern era, right? I have no idea, like before the 60s and 50s, whatever. You know, modern era, I say yes, man. And it's because it really can only go up against, I guess, the Georgia Southern one, right? There's been a couple stinkers against like a Vandy and stuff like that. But you know, Georgia Southern, you have a lot of background on that, a lot of history that I'm sure that you're going to get into. But just this game against South Florida, listen, with the expectations being as high as they were for this team, Billy's best roster he's ever had. This team has been getting a preseason college football playoff buzz. You know, you were at home. You were against USF, a state school. What are they called now? Group of five school. But as per usual, you know, Billy Napier, and we talked about it in the preseason show that we did with Chris Phillips and Allie Peak. Billy Napier is going to throw you one of these at least once or twice a year, man. We talked about that, Neil. Look, 2022, all right, Kentucky, after the big win against Utah, the first game in the Billy Napier era, he throws a massive stinker in the swamp. AR's probably worst game ever. Then that same year, Vandy, a week after a huge win against South Carolina, okay, you lose to Vandy in Vandy. In 2023, Utah, I saw an interview with a PFF guy who said that looked like the worst prepared football team he's ever seen. The 2023 game against Utah, in which they lost over at Utah. That same year, Arkansas, Pittman was on the ropes. This ended up being Arkansas's only SEC win. It was a win which essentially knocked you out of a bowl game, Okay. Then you go to 2024 home opener against Miami, a state rival. You lay a massive egg, and then USF on Saturday. Something about Billy Napier's coaching style that lends itself, and we're going to talk about it, but it lends itself to these types of results, Neil. But this is probably the worst one of all of them ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I quite put Miami or Utah up there in the categorization of the most embarrassing losses ever. Worst can be very subjective. Like, you can throw the 2020 LSU game in there because of the way that game goes down with Marco Wilson just being a moron. You can also throw the streak breaker against Kentucky in there. The 2013 Vanderbilt loss. You can go back 20 years. The final Zuckening, the game you go to Mississippi State and you lose to a 2-9 Mississippi State team, or 3-8 maybe, that lost to Maine that year. So I think those types of games still pale in comparison to when you lose to teams that are not recruiting from the same pool of talent as you. So that's Group of 5 and FCS. So real quick, let's go through what happened in this game, and then I will present the facts on the side of why this is the worst ever loss. Let's go through what happened. Florida kicks 3 field goals on its first 3 possessions, and from there they managed to score exactly 7 points the rest of the way. Some questionable calls, some questionable no calls. The tug of the jersey on Hayden Hansen kind of comes to mind. Florida was held to just 16 points in this game. Bottom line, 355 yards, which isn't really good either, but 16 points on the day is abominable. You're favored by 18.5. You don't even score that many points, let alone win by that many points. You can't even score that many. DJ Lagway does not look good. On the USF side, it's not like they do anything crazy. They just took the fight to Florida. They were just ready to execute. There were no trick plays. There were no real anomalies. There was nothing crazy in this game at all, aside from the fact that you snapped the ball over the punter's head, which is Florida beating Florida, not USF beating Florida. And Florida just never answered back in the trenches. Florida just couldn't establish its will enough. I mean, they had some plays where they created some push. There were some plays where they did get into the USF background. Not enough, not consistently enough to really say that they controlled the trenches. And then the defense does break in the end. We're talking, you and I throughout the game are discussing, well, this is not great. They're moving the ball, but so far it's bend, don't break. Well, then they break in the second half. First, there's a 66-yard touchdown pass from Byron Brown to Keyshawn Singleton. That gave USF the lead for the first time. And then Florida gets the ball back late, and they give up an 87-yard drive that bleeds the entire remainder of the clock down. Nico Gramatica then walks the game off with an extra point, basically, and a field goal. So that's what the game looks like if you just read the box score. Well, what the box score is not going to tell you is that Billy Napier, again, horrendously mismanaged the end of the game sequence, was responsible for more stupid play calling, and for the second time in his tenure, he sits back and watches as a defensive lineman gets ejected and cost the team 15 yards for spitting at an opponent. None of that's in the box score. Box score is bad enough on its own. None of this will show up if you just read the statistics. And now what I think you and I both agree on, Adrian, is this was the most highly anticipated season Florida's had since COVID. That season's over before it begins now. Essentially, for all intents and purposes, the season is shot. This was supposed to be the easy game that you had on your FBS slate, at least. Everyone had this earmarked as a Florida win before the season, with talking points like, well, Florida's got a brutal schedule, but hey, they've got 2 wins to start the year off to fine-tune some things. And I like how we can kind of ease into this gauntlet of a schedule we have with 2 wins to start the year. Second one's going to be a little tougher than the first, but boy, I mean, you got at LSU, you got at Miami, you got Texas coming to you, and then at Texas A&M. Boy, am I glad we get those 2 warm-up games first. And what's the record going to be in those 4 games that I just talked about? Well, I don't know, but let's see how we look in those first 2 wins. That's all gone now. This season is not broken. It is completely shattered. It is not just a fracture here or there where you can fix 1 or 2 things. The operation is completely busted and shattered into a million pieces. Now, I'm not saying it's over, because hypothetically, going along with this metaphor, you can get down on your hands and knees and pick up those million pieces and then use several trucks full of Loctite glue to put it all back together. It's not an easy task. It'll take a lot of work, but you can do it. Problem is that Loctite glue project has to be done really quick, because there's a deadline here of 5 days from now when you go to Red Stick and play LSU, and then you play Miami in 12 days from now. You lose those games, there's not going to be any sympathy for the kind of late season turnaround we had last year, because the standard this year is the playoff. Unlike last year where it was just 7-5, 8-4. All right, be at the bottom end of that. We'll give them a pass for it. And this time in this game, unlike Georgia Southern, Florida had most of its team. Couple of ancillary pieces were out. Dallas Wilson's out. Caleb Banks is out. Fine. Florida easily should have won this game anyway. You still have George Gumps. You still have Tyreek Sapp. You still have Miles Graham. You still have Devin Moore in the secondary. You still have Cormani McClay in the secondary. You still have your offensive line intact. You still have Austin Barber. You still have Jake Slaughter. You still have Damian George. You still have Trey Wilson, finally healthy, finally getting involved in the offense in this game. You still have DJ Lagway, your Heisman Trophy candidate at QB. You still have Hayden Hansen. You still have J. Michael Sturdivant. This is your team that you handpicked, and you don't have the excuse of injuries or other issues costing them playing time. So that's this loss. Now compare that all to Georgia Southern. Florida comes into that game 4-6. They lost 5 straight. Gators technically playing for a bowl game there, but a juggernaut in FSU was up next. So I think we all kind of knew that was going to be the end of that. Georgia Southern technically was an FCS team that year, but what people forget is they'd already begun the transition from FCS to FBS when they played us. They knew they were moving to the FBS when they played us. In fact, that season, 2013, they were so far along in their transition, they were actually ineligible for their FCS's conference championship. They were not allowed to play in the FCS conference, in their FCS's conference title or the FCS playoffs, because their roster had already been adjusted for FBS regulations. And they had actual NFL players on that team. Jerick McKinnon made a nice living as an NFL running back. Antoine Williams, a linebacker, played 2 years in the NFL, made a third year as a practice squad player. Younghoe Koo, their kicker, made it to the NFL. He's still kicking today for the Falcons. And a bunch more guys signed on as UDFAs and made practice squad rosters. This was not a joke of a program. And that was actually the last game they ever played as an FCS team. So, but that game was more embarrassing because it gave us the meme of 2 teammates blocking each other. Okay. All right, I hear you on that. I see your situation, and I'll raise you situation. A man spit on his opponent for the second time under Billy Napier. Brendan Bett gets a stop, and he spits on a USF offensive lineman. This is after a first down stuff of a running play, which would have forced 2nd and 11 or 12 with 2:07 remaining. Completely flips the field. USF goes from its own 24 to its own 39. Very next snap, huge play to get them into field goal range. 2 times now. That I can't get over this, Adrian. 2 times we've had a guy spit on an opponent and completely flip the game around. The first time, Jamari Lyons against FSU in 2023. At that point, when Jamari Lyons spit on his FSU opponent, Florida was winning the game 12-0. Florida winds up, of course, losing the game 24-15. Completely flips the momentum on its head. So, yes, USF is technically in the FBS, and they deserve a lot of respect. And we'll give them respect as the show goes on. But I don't see it. I don't see Georgia Southern holding on to that distinction anymore. We had to use Heather Mordenwake at quarterback.
Just to wrap this up, man, listen, when it's all said and done, that team that lost to Georgia Southern was a bad team. This team that lost to USF was a potential college football playoff team. We're supposed to thought. Okay, or so we thought. So that's it. That's the end of the discussion. That's why this is the worst loss. Who cares if a 4-6 team ended up losing to Georgia Southern in the grand scheme of things? This loss could set into effect some dominoes that could lead to very bad places for this football team. So And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and we will talk about that. And I think before we even talk about what's coming next, let's take one more look back, as nauseating as it may be, as to exactly what went wrong. Because there is a lot to talk about that was not good from Florida's standpoint. The offensive line did not get the push that we thought they'd create. Our defensive line did not create the push that we thought they'd make. DJ Lagway did not look good as a thrower of the football. His line looked good, 23 of 33 for 222 yards, but he didn't look great on tape. A lot of screens in there. And then the coaching malpractice again lets Florida down. So, Adrian, I'll let you start off this segment because I talked a lot in the last one.
Yeah.
The coaching, what stood out to you above all else? Because there was a lot to pick through here.
Well, first, with what you went through the game as far as the lines of scrimmage, I thought Florida was going to dominate both lines. But when you look at what happened in this ball game, besides all the other things, on offense, Florida had 7 tackles for loss. This is on top of 11 tackles for loss that they gave up last week. That puts them at 18 for the season. That's last in the SEC. And
Florida's offense is allowing opponents, just to clarify, Florida's offense, you're saying, is allowing opponents. It's not that Florida is creating tackles for loss when the Gators
on offense. On
Correct.
offense, they are allowing they allowed 7 tackles for losses on Saturday and 11 last week. That's 18 for the 2 games that they've played. Ranks last in the SEC, like I said, and 129th nationally. Okay? Mind you, LIU, USF. We're not saying Georgia and like LSU. Okay? On defense, the flip side, they had 11 missed tackles against USF. Okay? They had only 1 sack and only about 3 or 4 tackles for loss against USF. Okay? So both lines of scrimmages that you believed you were going to have an overwhelming advantage in, pretty much USF got the best of you. And as a team, and we praised it so much last week, Neil, so we got to bring it up this week. 11 penalties for over 100 yards as a team. So everything they did good last week as far as the no penalties, no turnovers, man, flipped it this week, okay? Coaching, is that coaching? Were you able to get your team fired up to play this game? I heard all during the week that something that USF result against Boise State did was get Florida's attention, right? USF wasn't going to be able now to sneak up on Florida in the swamp. That Boise State result got their attention. There's only 6 of these a year, 6 home games, right? Because that 7th one is in Georgia. Well, it's in Jacksonville against Georgia. So you only get 6 of these a year at home in the swamp. And a lot of people say, when you look at the film, a lot of people have commented that they didn't look like they were ready to play on Saturday, that they looked like they were kind of obligated to be there. It was the next game on the schedule, and they showed up and see what happens. So, yeah, that goes down on coaching too, Neil. That goes down on coaching, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to pick at with the coaching. I would not have started there. I think that I'm actually very glad that you went there, because I was going to go in a completely different direction with my criticism of the coaching. And I think that's why we have each other, to balance each other out, because you went with that. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. What happened in the last 3 minutes? So Nico Gramatica for South Florida misses a long field goal with 2:52 to go. Seems like Florida's going to escape with a win. Game then goes to a commercial break. And then Florida comes out of that commercial break and does not know what they're going to do offensively. So Napier has to waste a timeout. So now you're down to 2. How do you come out of a timeout and not know the play you're going to run? At home, mind you. You don't have the stadium pulse working against you like you're going to have in Death Valley. Or Kyle Field in Aggie Land, or even Ole Miss gets rowdy. You're at home. The crowd is cooperating and being quiet for you. By the way, shout out to the crowd. Awesome environment for a terrible showing. But you don't even have that excuse here. How does that happen? And then coming out of the timeout, South Florida loads the box, dares Florida to throw. So on first down, they do. Lagway throws the ball. It's incomplete. Now, I understand that South Florida is loading the box because they want to dare Florida to throw the football, because that's what they want for obvious reasons, because incompletion stopped the clock without forcing them to call a timeout. So in an average situation, I completely understand throwing the football there. Even in an end of game situation, I can understand it. You want to beat them and deliver the knockout punch as opposed to just kind of not lose the game. Right? That's kind of football 101 there. You want to take your shot, and I get that. It is Napier for once living up to his mantra of scare money, don't make money. But Billy Napier spent the whole offseason telling us that his offensive line was going to be a massive strength. I don't think we saw that throughout the course of the game, but okay, if you're so sure about that, Billy, if you're willing to look right into that streaming camera that you look into for press conferences all off season long, and you tell us with such certainty that your offensive line is going to be such a massive strength that can be leaned on in crunch time to run the ball down the opponent's throats. I assume you're talking about games against LSU and Miami and Texas when you say this, by the way. But okay, here we are against South Florida, and you need to run the ball down their throats to bleed the clock. So sure, they load the box. They have a lot of numbers there. That's valid. But if this Florida offensive line is such a massive strength, shouldn't it be able to win in the trenches against South Florida when it really has to? It should have been winning the game all game long. It should have been winning the trenches all game long. But shouldn't you be able to win when it matters most if you trust this offensive line that much that you're willing to talk about it all off season long with your two offensive line coaches, by the way, costing us another gaffe on special teams. We'll get to that later. But if you're so sure you have a line that can be dependent on to beat the Georgias and the Miamis and the LSUs of the world, it shouldn't be that much of a problem to ask them to open up at least somewhat of a running lane against South Florida, even with them stacking the box. Now, there's
real quick on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, Neil. Post game, I don't know if you heard Lagway.
I'm gonna address that. That's exactly what I'm gonna say.
Yep, about it being an RPO.
Checking into the pass.
Was an RPO.
Yep.
And he checked it to the throw. Now, to comment on what you've been saying there, the way I see it in baseball, for instance, the take sign, all right? When you want the batter to take a strike because the situation calls for it, you don't hope he does it, okay? In Little League, you go like this: take one, take a strike, okay? In my opinion, this was a take a strike type of movement with Lagway, okay? First of all, he hasn't been practicing. He's an inexperienced quarterback to begin with, okay? Let's not act like this is Tom Brady out there. I know a lot of people have anointed him as Tom Brady, but he's not. He's an inexperienced, very young quarterback, okay? That moment dictates you got to run the ball because you need USF at a bare minimum to start using up some timeouts, at a bare minimum. So that should have been a play on first down. When you get the ball with 2 minutes and 52 seconds left, you get it back after the missed field goal. Billy Napier's got to call a run play, period. Not an RPO and give DJ the option, okay? Yep. He has to call a run play, regardless of Neil, how many times has Billy called a run play into a 9-10 man box before? It's not like it's something.
Quite a few, Adrian. Quite a few. To our dismay.
He actually does this quite often. Call run plays into 9-10 man boxes.
Now of all times is when he decides to change his approach.
Exactly. So that was his main mistake. Giving DJ the liberty in an RPO to check it to the pass, which it was there. Okay. DJ missed it. Like he missed a lot of passes, which we're going to talk about. So go ahead.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm going to get to. You read my mind there. So that's exactly the problem with that. If you're going to give your quarterback the ability to audible into a pass there, he better not miss. Like, he better be on fire. He better not have missed a single legitimate throw all day, aside from if it's 3rd and 30 and he's flushed and he, fires it out of bounds just to avoid a sack. he has those kind of incompletions, fine. He better not have missed a throw that he was actually trying to complete and not just hoist up as a Hail Mary type of play all day. He better be spinning. If you're going to give him the freedom to do that, he better be absolutely on point with every single throw he's made, because the other side of this is if the ball is incomplete, you've given them a free timeout. So why does Lagway have the freedom to audible into a pass here when he's missed throw after throw down the field all day? Doesn't matter that he had his man here. He's been missing throws all game long. I know the stat line looks good, but again, a lot of screens, a lot of quick slants there that are high percentage throws. And this was a high percentage throw too, relatively speaking. But you know what would have been even higher percentage? The screens that he loves so dearly with all his heart and soul. That would have been the play to go to here if you want to throw the ball. If you lied to us, Billy, about how great your offensive line is, and you now don't trust them to beat a group of 5 team at the point of attack, okay, fine. Now throw your screens that you love so much, because that bypasses the massive humanity that USF has put in the tackle box. But no. Now you want to go with the throw that's relatively high percentage, but also not the highest percentage throw that he could have. I say high percentage just because there was separation there. In general, that's not a high percentage throw. It's actually a low percentage play in general. On this particular route that was run, he did have him. But then we get to the worst part of all. Then we bleed 27 seconds. We have to punt. Then comes the spit. Touched on that already. Now, because you already wasted one timeout, you're down to 2. Then USF hits the big play with 1:54 to go to get to the Florida 32. And Dustin, this is your cue, Dustin, our producer, to get the video ready. You'll know when to play it in a second. USF hits the big play with 1:54 to go to get to the Florida 32-yard line. Byron Brown then hits Josh Porter on the next play for a 12-yard gain, puts the ball down to the Florida 20. There's now 1:45 to go. Napier lets the clock bleed all the way down to 1:01, not pop his timeout. When USF gets its next snap off, Alvin Isaacs then runs the next play for 6 yards. Ball is now down to the Florida 14-yard line. Napier again chooses to not pop his timeout. USF bleeds the clock down to 22 seconds. Byron Brown then runs the ball down to the Florida 8. And now is when Napier decides to go through his timeouts, at which point it is way too late to have any semblance of hope of getting the ball back for a chance to score yourself. There's no thought about letting USF score, but I'm not even going to touch on that. That is a train of thought of just letting the other team score. Florida's offense had not looked great all day, and besides, a field goal does require a snap and a hold, which could in theory go wrong. You could also block the kick. So I get the train of thought of not letting them score, but now you've wasted all the time that you could have had to get the ball back, whether you let them score or not. Whether they get a field goal or a touchdown, your opportunity to possess the ball again is gone. Dustin, video's coming up in a couple of seconds. USF just maneuvers itself into position for what's basically a walk-off field goal. And Dustin, here you go. Here is Billy Napier's explanation for that.
They were able to hold for the game-winning field goal. Was there a thought about trying to burn some time out sooner, or how did you kind of view the clock management there in the last 2 minutes?
Yeah, well, we had 2, right? So ultimately at that point, there's going to be a field goal kicked. They have 1, right? So they had an extra down. So regardless of when the timeouts get called, it's going to end up about the same.
I can't. It's
real quick while you're having this reaction right now. When you think about it, if you don't use the timeouts at right under 2 minutes, right? When you're trying to at least get the ball back with maybe over a minute at that time, because they're going to still have 1 down. If they don't throw an incompletion, they're going to still have 1 down that they could run it down. Okay. Yeah. But if you don't use the timeouts at that moment, then why are you using it when he ended up using them? All that he almost accomplished when he ended up finally using his timeouts was giving Byron Brown a couple more opportunities to almost run it in for a touchdown, because they were going to just bleed out the clock and end up kicking at least attempting a field goal. But he ended up calling timeouts, and instead of taking a knee and just centering it, they almost scored, which is kind of dumb.
You don't let them.
Because what happens if he had gotten hit and fumbled? Okay, then their coach would have been criticized like all get out. Why didn't you just take a knee and kick a field goal? So Billy's timeout usage there, it's almost like he got caught in between, not knowing what it was he wanted to do. The first thing he mentions in that clip is the fact that he only had 2 timeouts. So he was cognizant, which the third one.
He knew he wasted one, which I'll give him credit for that.
He had wasted, but he was cognizant of the fact that he wasn't going to be able to stop the clock on 3 downs, that it was going to get bled down no matter what. And that's because of the mistake of using that third timeout, obviously.
The first one, yeah.
Just goes to show you, man, that – and he gets caught in between often on these types of decisions in which almost like his brain, he wants to go to his analytical sheet, right? What does the analytics say, or what does my game feel say? And he gets kind of like caught in the middle there often. That's not the first time.
No. Adrian, you got your phone on you, right? Let's do a little live experiment in real time. A little real time psychology lesson. I want you to Google Hanlon's razor. That's HANLON' razor, RAZOR. Tell me what you see.
Hanlon's razor, an aphorism suggesting never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity.
There you go. Let's just call a spade a spade. That's the explanation right there. That's it. That is the totality of the explanation. He's just dumb. And like, this is the point where the national media people, like the Josh Pates, with no skin in the game, who do great jobs, I respect them, but they don't have any Florida allegiance. And then the beat guys who always have to be professional and say things carefully, and the people who just don't want to step on toes, so they just go about this in a vanilla way. This is the point where they say things like, yeah, it's kind of hard to defend that, or I just don't understand this, or my personal favorite, I'd love to hear the explanation for this. I'm different than them. I don't care in that sense. I just don't care. Billy Napier is just stupid. Like, that's it. That's all there is to say.
But why is this continuously happening to him? And it's because of what
I just said.
The fan base has been saying for a little bit over 3 years. Okay, the fan base has been saying he has to give up the OC play calling duties. It's too much, especially in today's game with everything going on off the field.
Yeah.
On field, he's having a tough enough time with his game day decisions. He is a very, very poor, and that's putting it kindly, game day coach. I think him and Mario Cristobal are neck and neck for the 2 worst game day coaches in college football right now. Okay, Mario gives him a run for his money, man. Okay, but it's just too much for him to handle. When you're at the game, you don't really see it on television, but when you're at the game there in the swamp, for people who go to any of the football games at home, watch him during the commercial breaks. He's doing stuff with the quarterback. He's going over play sheets. That darn play sheet thing, man, he's going to take that to his grave, man. That is never out of his hand. Never. He's always going to it.
He can take it with him to the unemployment line when he gets fired, which is one of our next topics of conversation. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't just for everyone else's sake, you don't gain anything by listening to his press conference ever. Like you can, yes, watch them for news that gets broken, like with the broken leg or the broken bone that was announced, or with LJ McCray needing a surgery. You can get useful information from that. You don't get anything beyond that. Like there's no explanation that he can possibly offer up. There's no combination of syllables that can possibly come from his mouth that's going to explain away what happened. There's no further context we need. There's no more clarification that we need. I don't even care to hear what he was thinking, because anything he'll say is the wrong answer. The right answer is because he's just a moron. And this is nothing new. We've talked about this in the very first game he coached at Florida with Anthony Richardson on the 3rd and 5 against Utah. The game he won, by the way, in the Swamp, his maiden voyage with the Gators. 3rd and 5, runs the ball for 2 yards. Napier then bleeds the clock all the way down under 2 minutes and then wastes a timeout, which is one that he would not have had Utah scored in its response in the final 2 minutes. It turned out to work out okay because Cam Rising threw the interception to Amari Burney, but that's still bad coaching. And ever since then, it has not only been corrected, it has gotten worse. This is what he is. There's just nothing else that we can say about it. We have 4 years, or I guess 3 years plus of data that tells us he's going to do something stupid whenever the opportunity presents itself. And the part about that that's really scary is by nature, Napier's conservatism means he's going to play a lot of close games. So there's not going to be a lot of margin for error. He doesn't do blowouts. That's just not in his DNA. So we're screwed in this vicious cycle where he's going to force the issue of being in close games where his decisions that are objectively dumb and ridiculed by coaches and scouts and people in the stands alike, those decisions are going to have much more costly impacts on the Florida Gators because they're happening in 1 or even 2 score games as opposed to 45-10 beatdowns. This is what it is. This is what it's always been at Florida. This is what it's always going to be as long as he's at Florida. And on that note, Adrian, we talked about this after the game. What is Billy Napier's job security? What do you think it is? What do you think it should be? And do you think a single win in the next couple of games does anything to change it?
It could. Look, he's going to be here the whole season, no matter what. And then a decision at the end of the season is probably going to be made. Depending on how the season goes, it'll be a decision to be made. Florida gets on a hot streak and end the season, 8-4, 9-3. Obviously, he ain't going to go anywhere. But if this ends up at 6-6 or lower, anything, even 6-6, he's going to be fine with this schedule. Anything lower than that, I think a decision is going to be made. And what's happened recently with Strickland, in my opinion, makes Billy less secure. Let me explain. First of all, Strickland won through Todd Golden a basketball national championship. Okay? That's a check for Scott Strickland. That's a little deposit in his piggy bank. Okay? It was always thought that Billy and Strickland were tied together. If one went, the other was going to go. That Scott Strickland was not going to be making another hire on the football side of things. Okay? Well, the basketball national championship got him an extension that Gator Nation was not happy about, but Scott Strickland is happy. And now Strickland's good to go to what, Neil? 30? 2030. And then he
has emeritus on top of that.
Then he gets the Jeremy Foley golden parachute of like 3 years as a consultant, right? Was it 3 years?
Yeah, emeritus status.
Emeritus status, nice little golden parachute. So he's good. So Scott Strickland is not tied to Billy Napier anymore, okay? I think those two things, those two incidents give Strickland the freedom to get rid of Billy if it comes to that, more so than he would have had. Okay, so I think Billy's job security is less secure today than it was Friday night. That's for sure.
I think I think that's the obvious answer. It's less secure now than it was before that game against South Florida kicked off. I think a couple things need to be taken into consideration here. Number one, what do the high-level boosters think? Because from what I've heard, they are very unhappy, as I'm sure anyone watching this could guess or listening to this could guess. They're very unhappy. Do they remain unhappy if Florida plays out the string the rest of the season and trades in some good wins for some expected losses? Because there really aren't any bad teams left on the schedule now for Florida. I guess Kentucky maybe, but I mean, they hung with Ole Miss for a while. Mississippi State beat Arizona State, so that's not going to be a gimme anymore. So there's not really any game that you could consider to be a bad loss. We already have the bad loss this year that we're going to get because everyone else we play is either in the SEC or a good ACC team in Miami or FSU. So if Florida now goes forward and wins some of its big games, let's say they beat one of LSU and Miami, lose the other one, they beat one of the 2 Texas schools, they split the 2 pairs of Bulldogs, Mississippi State or Georgia, it doesn't matter which one. I guess, to fans it does, but to the boosters, it probably won't as much. And then they go and they win one of Tennessee and FSU, and they win one of Ole Miss and Kentucky. Well, guess what? You've split your games right down the middle. Do you do so in a way that buys enough goodwill? I think the answer is no, because this year, like I said at the start, this year the expectation for Florida was college football playoff. Last year, the expectation was show me real improvement from 5-7, which was, as I said, again, 7-5, 8-4, just, something like that. Well, we got that. Wasn't how we drew it up, but we got that. We got 7-5. So this year, I don't think 6-6 is going to do it. I don't think 7-5 is going to do it, because I think the feeling among the boosters from what I've heard is that they need to be 9-3 this year. So the second that 4th loss comes and that 9-3 record is rendered impossible, then I think we're in a different spot. Now, 8-4 may still bring him back. I think, again, it depends on how it looks. Does Napier do something else stupid to lose another game for Florida? Or is Florida just beaten by teams with better rosters like Texas and Georgia and Miami and LSU, even for that matter? Or does Florida go out of its way to invent ways to lose games? Do we have another time where we snap the ball over the punter's head? Do we have another double jersey infraction? Do we have another clock mismanagement situation? I think if it's 8-4 and one of the losses comes in that kind of fashion, I do think that could be the end. I don't think you agree with me, but I think that's what the boosters I'm at least hearing information from are saying.
Now, listen, man, anything over 6-6, he's coming back. That's how I see it. I don't think we're going to get there, though. I don't think this team's going to make a bowl. So I think a decision will be made. Will be forced to be made. So we'll see how bad it is. If it's the 3-9, 4-8 range, I think it's guaranteed Billy's not returning.
5-7 is guaranteed.
And I don't want to hear anything about recruiting. I don't want to hear anything about Lagway leaving. None of that should be not even an iota of consideration. Not one iota. Not in today's game with NIL and the portal, okay, where teams could get flipped literally from one year to the next. So I don't want to hear none of that, man. That used to be a consideration 10, 12, 15 years ago. Not anymore. So I think a decision will be coming, though, because I don't see them getting bowl eligible. If they are, I'm going to be shocked, and I'll come here and say, hey, man, they made it, which even at 6-6, think about that.
That's still a step backward from last year, by the way. That's still
a step backward. You throw in the expectations. You throw in DJ Lagway, the chosen one, as your quarterback. You throw in this was Billy's best roster he's ever had, and all he could muster is 6-6 to make a Poland Weed Eater Bowl. But he will be brought back because the whole thing of let's run it back with DJ Lagway, one more year, yada, yada, yada. That's all going to be spun, and he will be coming back. That's how I see it.
I can't believe I'm in the position where I'm defending either Scott Strickland's intelligence or his integrity, but I actually don't think that's the case. I think that I think it's the high-level boosters driving this. I don't think it's Strickland. Again, I heard something after the South Florida game that it would be in his best interest. That's probably the safest way to put this without burning the person who told me this. It would be in his best interest to be at an absolute minimum 8-4, 9-3, and he's guaranteed to come back. I don't think from what I heard, I don't think 7-5 does it. Again, I guess the boosters could change their mind. That is how this works in college football. Information can be right one second and wrong the next. I'm not seeing it.
I'm saying it right here, right now in front of everybody. At 7-5, he gets fired. I'm taking you to Embers for a steak dinner, and we're going to post it. We're going to actually do like like a little live hitter from Embers having a steak dinner that I'll be buying you one of those nice little $60, $80 filet mignons. Okay, at 7-5 if he's terminated.
Okay. How about 8-4? Because I've heard that's up in the air, not decided one way or another.
Listen, I'm giving you 7-5. 8-4, there's like no. I mean, it's not even worth it. Me even. I mean, 8-4, there's no shot at all. I mean, none. 7-5, he's coming back. Much
The
less
counterpoint is, like, I hear you on getting DJ Lagway back, but you're going to have to rebuild that entire line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Tyreek Sapp is gone. George Gums is gone. Caleb Banks, who hasn't even played yet, will be gone. On the offensive line, Jake Slaughter will be gone. Austin Barber will be gone. Damian George, who hasn't even done that well so far, will be gone. You got a lot of rebuilding to do, and you got to do it real quick in one portal cycle, which has now just been shrunken down to just a few days in January. So I'm not liking Napier's chances of doing that, and I don't think the boosters will either.
And we haven't even got into Billy's buyout. You know, I've seen a couple different stories on that. Pete Nakos from On5 had a tweet today on that. He had a story on that, and Billy's buyout looks wild also. So got to also throw that in consideration. And when it's all said and done, listen, man, in today's college football, when you fire somebody with these massive buyouts, okay, you got to pay the coach the buyout. You got to pay his staff the buyout. Then you got to pay a new coach to come on. You got to pay the new coach's staff. Then you got to probably pay for a new football team because you're going to lose half of your team to the portal, right? Because they're upset that you fired their head coach. So now you got to pay a premium in the transfer portal. So when it's all said and done, firing a coach nowadays starts getting close to about $100 million proposition, okay, when it's all said and done. All right? So we haven't even talked about that. So that's why 8-4, 7-5, to me, I'm not buying you a steak dinner, brother. It ain't happening.
Counterpoint is the boosters were able to raise $25 million and change when that was the buyout number last year in the span of less than 24 hours. Scott Strickland, just being Scott Strickland and incompetent, chose not to do it. He won't have that opportunity this year because the boosters will be taking the controls from him. But that buyout drops this year. It is now 19.38 if Florida chooses to fire him at the end of this season. So they raised 25 and change last year. They can raise 19 and change this year. By the way, shout out to Scott Strickland yet again, who sets up a contract in a way that if you fire a coach, you still pay him 85% of what he is owed on his contract. Who does that? Kirby Smart's buyout at Georgia after he got extended the second time isn't that high. What is wrong with you? What kind of negotiating school did you go to that you let Jimmy Sexton just take you to the cleaners again after he apparently, according to Sexton himself, didn't get enough out of Dan Mullen's contract when he was fired? People thought that was a decently sized buyout. 85% of his annual salary to not coach? Are you insane? Strickland, like, what are you thinking that you put that in the guy's contract, that you'll pay him 85% to not do his job and go away?
That's how they're all structured. They're all structured that way. It's a big racket. It's a big racket.
Not
Most of these coaches, Sexton and Trace Armstrong, when it's all said and done, they're pretty much running college football. They're the two big power agents, and that's how they're doing it. And ADs are finding themselves, blackmailed basically. Either you put this in there or you can't even consider any of these coaches. So I don't know how it's going to change, to be honest with you. I don't know how it's going to change. So, but that's the deal with everybody.
Yeah. Again, I just Googled it. Kirby Smart's buyout, if he's fired, is 75% of what's left on his contract. 75% for arguably the greatest coach in today's game now that Nick Saban retired. It will be raised to 85% after this current season. But if he's fired during this season, he's owed 3/4 of it. It's higher than that for Billy Napier. That is astounding. to me. But okay, Scott Strickland being an idiot is not exactly a fresh observation.
Everyone's an idiot. Go ahead.
So, well, you know what? When you have a coaching record higher, or a coaching hire record like Scott Strickland does, where you hired 9 coaches and 5 of the 9 have winning percentages in the SEC of less than 40%, you kind of deserve the criticism that comes. Not to mention 2 of them got fired for abusing their athletes. But back to the task at hand here. Okay, where does the team go from here? Because we talked Napier, we talked his future. Where does the Gator football team go? Because you still got 10 games left on the schedule, and things can get ugly very quick. Of course, Notre Dame also lost to Northern Illinois, as people like to point out, and they won out from that point. So what's next for Florida?
I'm going to answer that by going back to Urban Meyer, man. There was Urban Meyer's first season. He was trying to run his spread and stuff like that in the SEC, and that was going to be the big criticism, right? That you're not going to be able to run that type of offense in the SEC, blah, blah. You're going to get the quarterback killed and stuff. And he was struggling in the first few games back then. And during the bye week, they changed up the offense. They put in a fullback. Okay, he changed up his offense, put in a fullback, and things pretty much took off from there. Billy Napier is not going to do anything like that, man. Look, this is the Billy Napier experience. We talked about it in the episode prior to the season at Louisiana. Well, first of all, you got to go back to Clemson. He was the offensive coordinator for 1 year there, and Dabo made a change. Billy then got passed over at Bama for the OC job. He ends up going to Louisiana, recruits like a maniac. He recruited for that conference kind of like what Alabama was recruiting 10 years ago in the SEC, just far and above better than everybody else. But yet, in that conference, Billy was neck and neck in do or die, 1-score ball games almost every week. Okay? That's just the type of football that Billy Napier coaches. That's his style of play. He wants to just grind out victories, play in a phone booth, zero margin for error. If you have a drop pass or you have a missed call by a ref, that's going to be huge, regardless of almost who you're playing, because that's just the type of game that Billy Napier is going to coach. So where does this team go from there? Listen, or where does this team go? Nowhere. It's going to go to the same spot, the same type of football that Billy Napier is known to coach. Don't expect any drastic changes. He's going to stick with his 12 personnel, and, the tight ends are going to be a big focus of this offense, and that's how it's going to be, man. Moving forward, we'll see if he gets any better results. But there's no proof of concept as of now, Neil. No proof of concept. You have 4 years of this in this conference, and you've gotten the same results.
Yeah, and what's that quote about doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results? Mm-hmm. You're insane. It means you're certifiably insane. I don't think that Billy Napier really believes anymore that he's going to wind up here for too much longer. And I think he has too much fun doing what he does, which is why he just a few minutes ago said that he's not, or a few hours ago said that he's not going to relinquish play calling duties. He's just going to ride this out for as long as he can. Nothing will change, just like you said. We're in complete lockstep on this. And he's just going to do what he has done until someone else makes the decision for him. Because I will say he was given a choice at the end of last season. He needed to hire an offensive coordinator, or he wasn't going to make it here. Well, he made his choice, and now he is where he is. Having said that, I do think it's possible that the guys rally around him and they play better, because the play on the field was certainly not good against South Florida. The coaching malpractice was facepalm worthy, but the play on the field was not exactly super either. So I think that could potentially get fixed. I think Lagway could hit some of his open reads more. I think the offensive line could generate more push and fire off the ball a little bit better. And I think we may see some wins that we're not supposed to get because of that. But I don't see Florida making a bowl game. And I think ultimately our conversation from a few minutes ago of does 6-6 or 7-5 or 8-4 bring it back, I think that's all moot, because I don't think this team gets to 6. I do think they'll get one they shouldn't. Maybe it's at LSU. Maybe it's at Miami. Maybe it's Texas. Maybe it's Georgia. Will Muschamp did that 2014. He beat a Georgia team he had no business beating. He killed them, in fact, because they couldn't stop Matt Jones and Kelvin Taylor that day. So maybe it's that one. Maybe history repeats itself again there. Maybe it's FSU, because right now we're not looking like we're supposed to win that one either. So they'll get one or maybe two of those. They shouldn't, but we know how this is going to play out, like you said, because we have 3 years of data before this that tells us there's going to be a lot of frustration, several losses that we know that the Gators probably should have won. And at the end of the day, a record that's just not good enough for the people who matter at the University of Florida. So with that said, I guess one more quick question on this topic, or on this topic of a USF recap before we go on to put it to bed until it's time to create the case to fire him again. What do we think about our QB situation? Because I don't think that DJ Lagway is as sure of a thing to start, let alone be a Heisman Trophy candidate, as we thought just a couple weeks ago. Do you make a change there?
Well, let me start with a little Tim Tebow here, man. Luke 12:45. Okay, to whom much is given, much is expected. Okay, you can't go pretty much anywhere in Gainesville without seeing DJ Lagway's face somewhere. Okay, you drive down Newberry, he's on a burger truck. Okay, his face is on a burger truck. Okay, so he's making a lot of money for a 19-year-old. He's making a lot of money.
Yep.
I think one of the big stories here, when this season is all said and done and Lagway has gone on to hopefully an NFL career, and I'm talking about 3-4 years down the road, we're going to look back and how DJ Lagway's injury situation has been managed, or better yet, mismanaged. Okay, I think there's something there. If there was some type of investigative journalists in Gainesville and stuff like that that could research this, you might be surprised. But I know nothing from anybody. I have no inside information, just what I see, just the information that's been made public. But if you look at the timeline with DJ's injury, Neil, right? He hurts his shoulder in 2024. Okay. Everything is so cloak and dagger with these injuries nowadays, which is surprising to me, right? Because these are now paid athletes. So you could kind of almost miss me with the whole student privacy thing. Okay. These are paid athletes now. Okay. So let's just leave it at that. But he hurts his shoulder. What decision? Who decided what to do at the end of that year? Right? Was surgery on the table? There's rumors that there was surgery on the table, that it was decided to not do that, to instead do rehab. Now, obviously, DJ's camp would be a huge part of that decision, obviously. But then we get word that, he's not participating in anything. He's not participating. He didn't participate in spring. He didn't then participate in any 11-on-11s during fall. Okay, so you start hearing word from there. So what happened? Did rehab not go well? Then he has the lower leg injuries. Well, he had the hamstring coming off of 2024. And then he has the calf injury. Okay, so could he practice on 11-on-11? How is his shoulder? Okay, were we being too overly cautious not having him do live 11-on-11s? Could he have done some in spring? Could he have done some in fall? We're never going to know. Okay, but this is what we do know, Neil. When you look at DJ Lagway, these first 2 games, man, it's scary how poorly he's playing. Okay, and it's a perfect storm of everything. Okay, let's just wrap it up, put it over here. Billy's offense and play calling. That's always one thing. Okay? But now you have a quarterback that's rusty as all get out. I watched some film today, because that's the thing, man. You can't hide nothing from fans anymore. This is not the 80s, the 90s. You could go on YouTube, and there are people who know football. Okay? Not everybody has to be a football coach. Okay, heck, you have some football coaches breaking down film for you. Okay, so his pocket presence is just bad. All right. He is seeing ghosts. He's leaving the pocket with men open downfield. His technique is awful. I mean, he's throwing off platform when he doesn't have to, and different styles of off platform throws. And this is just in the last 2 games, obviously. And those are all leading directly to all these overthrows and missed passes that he's having. And now, Neil, he looks like a weak runner, man, right now. He looks like he's kind of almost running on one leg. Like, is that calf fully healthy? Is it mentally now that he's afraid if he really pushes off that calf? He's always had scary injuries. Let's just start there. Shoulders are one of the more scary injuries that you could have for a quarterback. Same in baseball. In baseball, you much rather have an elbow injury. Just fix that bad boy with Tommy John. Every pitcher has it nowadays, and you're good to go, okay, in about 9 to 10 months. You get a shoulder injury, that's a different story. So shoulder injuries are always scary. And then calf injuries are always very scary. Why? The calf's connected to the Achilles. That Achilles blows, you're done, okay? So is that in his head? Sure as hell looks like it, man. People are saying he also looks a little overweight. I don't know. He's always been a big guy, right? But you have a quarterback whose offense is not helping him. His play caller, not really helping him much. He's rusty as all get out. Probably has a damaged wing. And now he's on one leg. And that's your $1 million man behind center.
Multi-million-dollar man.
Multi-million-dollar man, obviously. Okay? So that's a bad situation to be in. When I told you, not that I told you, if I had told you at the beginning of this season, what percentage would you ever think of DJ getting benched for Tramel Jones? You would have said 0%. Right? But now, here today, there's a number on that percentage. There's a number on it. And it has nothing to do with like him being knocked out of a game. Okay? Just for pure performance-wise. There's actually a number on that right now. Okay? Sitting here. And in fact, Neil, I'll go one further. Anybody else not named DJ Lagway, I think right now, with the way he's playing, you're considering benching him. Okay? He's playing that poorly. He is flat out playing some bad football. And that has been against the 2 easiest teams on the schedule. Let me say that again. He's playing awful football against some of the 2 easiest teams on the schedule. He'll pull a good throw here and there. He'll pull a nice one. And people say, well, hey, man, no deep shots. We're not taking any deep shots like last year when he had all those nice deep shots. There were a couple of times that there were deep shots available in this game Saturday, and he spit on it, took off. That's maybe pocket. Is that just his pocket awareness is just not there? Or is it he doesn't trust his arm right now?
He misfired on the throw to Vernell Brown where he makes the one-handed catch last week against LIU. He missed on that throw. That's a great catch by Vernell Brown. And he just flat out misses in another sense. He just doesn't see them. I'm at a loss here. Like that's why I let you take the first crack at this one, because I don't know what the answer is here. Like obviously everything you said makes perfect sense. He is your multi-million-dollar man. He is the 5-star. He is your hand-picked guy. You may as well give him a little bit longer of a leash than 2 games. But the way he's played the first couple of games, by no means am I excusing Billy Napier's stupidity at various points, but the way he has played in those first couple of games also does not do a coach any favors. Like the play calling sheet that we want to rip out of Napier's cold, dead hands, right? That doesn't do any good when your guys cannot execute them. I will absolutely concede that point that Lagway is not playing. I wouldn't say he's playing terribly, but he's not playing well. He's playing below average. He is playing a below average level of football through 2 games.
Against the 2 worst teams on the schedule.
Right. Now, he's not really turning the ball over. He had the 1 interception in 2 games. He just missed on that throw. So it could be worse, right? He's not just handing the other team free touchdowns. Richardson did that In his only real year as a starter against Kentucky, he just gave them touchdowns with some bad throws. Lagway's not doing that. But, I mean, aside from that, it is hard to imagine this getting much worse. Although I guess we're going to find out when we talk about the Gators going to LSU.
Take that back. Take that back, brother. Take what you just said back. Because they're going to Baton Rouge. Yep. And today, the kickoff time for Miami came out at 7 or 7:30. It can get much worse.
Yeah. So it can get worse. Like I'm saying, it's just it's kind of hard to. That's point is that's really the last thing standing between Lagway's current performance and it cannot possibly get any worse is the turnovers. So, all right, let's be done with this game forever. Or again, at least until it comes time to start listing off the data points for why Napier was fired on his proverbial tombstone. Final word. Your play of the game was what?
This is easy, man. Vernell Brown III's punt return.
Yeah.
Biggest play of the game for the Gators because it set up their only touchdown. It gave Florida a 20-yard field in which they were able to get their only touchdown of the game. So Vernell Brown's punt return, which was explosive, man. Okay, and that's something that I called for at the beginning of this year in our show. I said, man, it's about darn time we get a playmaker back there that could do more than just fair catching. Okay, and we got one. All right, VB3, my play of the game, no doubt. Second week in a row. Last week was his catch, obviously.
You know, you are allowed to use plays that are not good for Florida in this segment.
Okay, go for it.
That's what I'm going to do. My play of the game is the long touchdown pass that goes for 66 yards. That's the first time in this game that South Florida actually had the lead. They were kind of hanging around and just playing close and keeping themselves in the game. But that 66-yard bomb from Byron Brown to Keyshawn Singleton, the first time USF took the lead, and I think the first time that Florida really started to doubt themselves, and maybe that had something to do with the way they played down the stretch. Doesn't really explain why they didn't play a lot better before that point, but I think that was when we can kind of feel the tenor of the game shift from, all right, this is way too close for comfort, but we'll find a way to win like we did against Charlotte. We won 22-7 to, we actually could and very well might lose this game.
Yeah, and on that play, Neil, very important. Remember, one of the advantages Florida had going into this game was that this was Tennessee light. Okay, so Florida has the experience of playing against this type of offense, playing against Tennessee every season, much less Golich being obviously the OC at Tennessee. Okay, 2 times Florida tried to substitute the fire drill thing with USF not substituting. Okay, so the ref ain't standing over the ball. Okay, the ball could be height, and that's something that these speed offenses feed on. 2 times Florida tried to substitute. Okay, in that situation. 1 time, they got called for illegal procedure, cost them 5 yards and a first down. And then the second time was this play right here. They were trying to substitute. Tyreek Sapp started looking at the sidelines with his hands up, like, what are we doing? The ball was snapped. Sharif Denson, just the way he played that ball, you could tell he started that play all discombobulated. The reason why you don't try and substitute during those types of situations is so that your players could just concentrate on what they're doing, okay? Because if they're thinking about, okay, are we subbing here? What package? What am I doing now? If they're thinking about that and the ball snapped, they're already behind, okay? They are already at a mental disadvantage. And the way he played that ball, he was there. He could have been there in plenty of time to make either a play on the ball or at least do a major right and detach that guy from that football, okay? Instead, he almost hit Johnson, and they kind of like almost erased each other. So that play, I put it on the coaches for trying to do what they were doing, man. They know better than that. They got caught earlier in the ball game. They tried to do it again, and it cost them 7.
We started the show by talking about, was this the worst loss in school history, and Georgia Southern, and then, you have the meme of the guys blocking each other. And my response to that was, well, Brandon Bett spitting on someone, that's kind of way worse. This was kind of the equivalent. You have two guys just colliding into each other on this 66-yard touchdown. That's kind of close. You have two teammates who are supposed to be working together for a common cause by doing their own assignments, instead take each other out. And now none of them can execute. So I guess that just adds another bullet point to this maybe being worse than Georgia Southern. Let us know in the comments, by the way. We love the commentary from y'all. Be sure to let us know in the comments. Was it this? Was it Georgia Southern in 2013? Was it, I guess, Mississippi State 2004? What was the worst loss in school history? Definitely drop a comment down there below and let us know. All right, player of the game.
Oh, this is easy too, man. Too easy. All right, too easy. Player of the game. The fans. The fans were the players of the game, plural. Why? What was this, Neil? The 15th straight sellout? What was it?
Yeah.
Whatever it was. And the crowd was hopping, man. That crowd was into that game, dude. And at every moment that it had to be, when the defense needed the crowd to come in hot, they came in hot. So to me, man, fans easily the players of this game.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. It's not going to be for a good reason, but I'm going to say Brendan Bett. He had the influence of the game down the stretch, not for a positive reason, but he helped flip that down the stretch and gave South Florida more life. Remember, on that first down play, Florida got a TFL, a very rare one, but they stuffed a run for a loss of 1. Going to be 2nd and 11. You're going to put them behind behind schedule in the down and distance count. Now you erase that and you give them 15 free yards after one of your few good plays on defense all game long. Brendan Bett, of course, got kicked out of the game, gives USF 15 free yards, and puts USF in position to hit the big play that they then hit and then score. Now, I could also go with a couple of different USF defenders on this play. I thought that USF did play a very good game on defense. I think a lot of that was because they knew exactly what Florida was going to run before they ran it. But USF did play pretty gap sound from what I saw from the stands alongside you in Section 1. I could also go, I guess, with Vernell Brown on this. I could go with him because he had the big punt return when Florida was struggling mightily on offense and wasn't generating much of anything. He kind of took that away from Napier and from a responsibility standpoint by generating offense all on his own. So he tried to help Florida out. He tried to help his coach out. But, I mean, again, you're talking about the guy who has the most influence down the stretch. It's got to be Brendan Bett. And on that note, we got that. We got a response to that too in Napier's press conference. We got the response that, well, he's sorry. He feels remorse about that. And we're not sure if we're going to be disciplining him at all. I mean, are you serious?
Well, he said that they haven't made a decision yet as far as any further suspension, but that they will be handling it. They've already handled it internally, up to also Brendan Bett himself contacting the player and personally apologizing for what he did to him. And then he was also today going to be apologizing to the team. I got a little bit of a different take on this one, Neil, to be honest with you.
Go ahead.
You've brought up Brendan Bett a couple times. You know, he hasn't been a Gator that long, okay? He got here in spring? Okay, so anybody who's watched The Waterboy knows that Gators have enlarged medulla oblongatas. And maybe he just hasn't learned how to adapt to his enlarged medulla oblongata and control his anger. Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it. I frankly don't care because we're so deep into the woods at this point that you got to do something to set an example. It's the second time. It's the second time that a Napier-led team has completely flipped the momentum in a game by spitting at an opponent, not to mention the fact that there's a national firestorm about it because you have a guy do it to start the NFL season on Thursday Night Football, Jalen Carter. How – I don't know. It blows my mind. There's a short-circuiting in my brain whenever I think about this. And worse yet – with the quotes that come out with Brendan Bett crying in the locker room, we don't hold that against him. Well, of course you don't hold that against him. That's never been the culture of this team, at least not in any way that anyone else can see from a results standpoint. Of course it's not a problem. There was a tweet, I think, from Shannon Snell that summed this up perfectly. Something along the lines of course not. Of course we don't hold that against him. Just pat him on the back and give him a hug, put a pair of beats on his head, give him some Chipotle, and it's all good. We'll sing Kumbaya together. Why should it be any different? The man only committed a crime on national TV. That meets the legal definition of assault. Why should we be upset with him? Why should we hold it against him?
Would you kick him off of the team?
I would, yeah. And I would have kicked Jamari Lyons off the team last year too. You've got to set the example. Napier has been preaching discipline, and we haven't seen jack you-know-what to prove it in 3+ seasons now.
Well, I wouldn't kick him off of the team. I wouldn't kick him off of it. I would have this be a learning lesson. These are young guys. Yeah, it is inexcusable. I understand that. But to kick off the team, nah. To me, that falls under, any type of, severe crime, obviously more than just like theft or like
it's assault. It is
driving
assault.
with a suspended license, but any type of battery on a female, any domestic stuff like that. Yeah, all those require you being kicked off of the team. But for something like this on the field, he's already going to be suspended minimum for the first half of the LSU game. Remember that carries over. This took place in the second half, so he is already missing the first half of that LSU game. I don't think that they're going to suspend him any further. I expect him to be playing in the second half of the LSU game, and then when the question is asked again, they'll say that they handled it internally moving forward, and that's it. That's how I see it playing out.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're a part of the All Kinds of Weather team now. I vehemently disagree on this.
I know.
I don't want to hear the list of things that are worse about it. And it's not you. It comes from a lot of other people. It's not. I'm not just taking this out on you. I'm just pushing back against the viewpoint. Well, if there's abuse of a female, if there's stuff, dude, it's assault. Spitting on someone is, first of all, disgusting, and second of all, it meets the legal threshold of assault. It is assault. You committed assault on the football field.
Remember when Urban kicked off the cornerback, Avery
Atkins. Avery
Atkins. What did he kick him off for? What was that he did?
Pretty bad stuff.
You remember?
It was pretty ugly.
Whatever it was, Urban said that if he had to do over again, he wouldn't do it. And that ever since that happened, the decision to kick somebody off of the team, he took it like very, very serious and for just an egregious thing. I mean, Avery Atkins ended up committing suicide,
terrible story.
A lot of people attribute it because of that, because football was taken away from him at that time and he just spiraled. Hey, when it's all said and done, at 19, I was a knucklehead myself, man. And I did probably more stupid stuff than spitting on somebody, to be honest with you. Okay, so a little grace sometimes doesn't hurt anybody, as long as you could really learn from it and make yourself better. But hey, real quick, because we've talked about this a lot. You talked about the players of the game for the USF defense. I just looked real fast, and remember, I had mentioned Jalen Schuler as a USF player to look for. Him and his linebacking partner had 10 tackles for Harris, 7 for Schuler, 4 solos for Harris, 3 for Schuler, led the team. They had a sack and 3 TFLs. They pretty much dominated. It just goes to show you how weak of a game Florida's offensive line had. And that was very surprising, man. That, to me, one of the most surprising things of that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first real, like, disagreement that you and I have ever had on a show, which is fun. I think it's fun. It makes for good content. If we always agreed on every single thing, it would be kind of boring. But, I mean, look, I think that the Avery Atkins situation is also a little different because Urban Meyer was not completely spiraling out of control in terms of his grip on the football program. Like Florida, he came into Florida and he won games immediately. First year, they're 9-3. Atkins actually has a pick against FSU in that game. So being 9-3 and having a lot of goodwill from both the fans and the boosters who matter is quite different than Billy Napier being here for 3+ years and having a winning percentage of exactly 500. Like losing 20 games out of 40 puts you in a bit different of a situation where you might want to be a little bit more desperate. Of course, Billy Napier also doesn't understand the very concept of urgency and desperation. So I guess that's something to consider here too. But I'm saying if I were in Napier's shoes and I had just lost this game and I was staring the real possibility of not making it past this season square in the face, I probably would say, okay, drastic times call for drastic measures. Sorry, Brendan, goodbye. And I know it's harsh, but you've got to do something that shows this is not acceptable. Florida,
right, the horse is dead. The horse is dead. Let's go.
Horse is dead. The horse is dead. But here's one more point. If you have one more game this year where a player does something stupid like this to cost you, there's going to be no sympathy, not from me, but from the boosters. Now the horse is dead.
All right, let's go.
All right. We'll talk about LSU coming up shortly. You've been on here for almost an hour and a half now. You can see I'm tired of this too. All right. Your grades, Adrian.
Grades. All of them. Offense. I'm giving offense an F. Lagway's play, Billy's offense, 16 points against USF. That's an F every day of the week. Defense, I'm giving you a C. No pressure on the quarterback. Missed tackles. Thought we could control the line. The only thing that's keeping it at a C right now, and that's probably a little harsh. Neil, they only gave up 16 points. You can't give them, you have to deduct 2 for the safety.
Yep.
If your defense gives up 16 points against anybody, much less USF, you got to win that game. 99 times out of 100, you got to win that game. So C is probably a little harsh, but I'm in a harsh mood. Special teams, a D. Man, you know, Neil, if you think back, and I've referenced it a couple times to our preseason show. One of the things that I said about special teams that we were so good on was the long snapping. Remember that me and Allie had talked there about what's the long snapper's name? I'm blanking out. Rocco Underwood possibly getting a brick. Remember? And then Chris Phillips looked it up that long snappers are considered for the All-American position. And heck, man, he shoots one over the head of the punter. But anyways, the only thing that's keeping it at a D is Vernell Brown's punt returns. That's it. That's the only thing keeping it at a D, or else that would have been an F. Also, coaching, it's an F. Basically, you were out-coached in all phases by UCF's coaching staff. That's how, everyone sees it. And overall, it's got to be an F. The worst loss in UF history, like we talked about, deserves an F. If there's anything worse than that, it deserves that too. So those are my grades. How about you, man?
Yeah. So before you actually came along, it was Chris and I. We had something worse than an F called that F, meaning like a 2 out of 100 grade or a 4 out of 100. Whereas there's like a respectable F of like a 52 out of 100 where you fail, but it's like, all right, 2 more questions on the test you got right, and you might have passed. So here we go. With that in mind, offense, F, that F. You get no sympathy from me from Lagway not playing well because the offensive line just didn't do its job either. Defense, C-. The bust isn't great. I think that they did make a couple of plays that could have won the game. Then again, Brandon Bett was part of the defense, so that's got to be considered part of it. You also gave up the touchdown, the 87-yard field goal drive when you needed to make one more stop. And I know Napier did a lot of stupid stuff before that point. You still broke and let them get 87 yards on you. I guess 72 because 15 came in the penalty. Special teams, F. Not going to be that F because Trace Mack did bounce back with hitting a couple field goals.
Good point.
Not something that I was going to expect after the LIU game. Thought his mind would be in shambles, but no. Vernell Brown, as you mentioned on the punt return. Tommy Doman, the punter, actually on that last punt before USF takes over and goes down the field on us, he hit a great punt. He did hit the field. So he's going to get some credit there, but the snapping over the punters, like Rocco Underwood, second time he's done that, by the way, with a bad snap last year against Georgia on the field goal. And now this, just two terrible mistakes and terrible moments. And then coaching, F, that F. We talked about the horse is dead. That horse is now in a million pieces because we shattered its bone structure. So overall grade is going to be an F because you lost to a group of 5 team on your home field. And, I think that is a good place to leave it. I think we're done with this. I think that the horse is beaten to death and it's time to move on. Talk about LSU. Yeah, there's the South Park gif. Y'all, until next time, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. That always helps us. Give us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcast. That helps us as well. Leave a comment underneath here if you're watching on YouTube. Let us know if you think this was the worst loss in school history. All that good stuff helps us bring you more great Florida Gator content. So sorry we had to be so harsh today, but like Adrian said, you lose to USF on your home field, kind of gets a lot of people in harsh moods. So hopefully the next one is going to be a little bit more sunny to talk about, but given that it is a top 5 team on the road in LSU, I'm not so sure it will be. But we'll have to watch the game and see. So until then, y'all, stay safe, stay healthy, go Gators, and we'll talk about LSU coming up later this week.
Go Gators.